Nestled on a quiet, tree-lined street in the heart of Willow Creek, 132 Willow Lane stood as a testament to the idyllic suburban life many dreamed of. Its white picket fence framed a lush green lawn, dotted with seasonal flowers that Diane Holloway meticulously tended every weekend. To their neighbors, Martin and Diane were the epitome of small-town charm, a loving couple who had called this home for nearly 2 decades. Diane, known for her warm smile and freshly baked cookies, was often seen chatting with fellow parishioners at St. Mary's Church or volunteering at community events. Martin, a retired schoolteacher, spent his days cultivating his vegetable garden and reading novels on the front porch, occasionally waving to passers-by. Their home wasn't just any house, it was a hub of activity, hosting countless gatherings over the years. Summer barbecues brought laughter and sizzling steaks into the backyard, while holiday parties filled the living room with twinkling lights and cheerful chatter. Children ran through the halls during birthday celebrations, and friends lingered long after dinner ended, reluctant to leave the cozy atmosphere. For all intents and purposes, the Holloways were pillars of the community, kind, generous, and deeply rooted in the fabric of Willow Creek. But behind the closed doors of 132 Willow Lane lay a secret so dark, so grotesque, that it would forever shatter the illusion of safety and trust the neighborhood had cherished. As the truth unraveled, the once-admired couple became synonymous with terror, and their home transformed from a beacon of warmth into a chilling symbol of evil hidden in plain sight. It began subtly, almost imperceptibly, like a faint whisper carried by the wind. At first, the neighbors thought little of the smell, an unpleasant but fleeting odor they attributed to a dead animal trapped somewhere beneath the house. But as days turned into weeks, the stench only intensified, clinging stubbornly to the air around 132 Willow Lane. It wafted into open windows, seeped into yards, and lingered in nostrils long after one had walked away from the property. Some tried to ignore it, dismissing it as a nuisance rather than a warning sign. Others whispered among themselves, speculating about its source but refusing to confront the possibility that something sinister might be lurking within the Holloway's home. Then came the noises, the muffled thuds, the eerie wails, and the occasional sound of footsteps echoing late at night. These sounds were irregular and fleeting, making them easy to dismiss as random occurrences. Probably the TV, some reasoned. Maybe they're taking care of a sick relative, others suggested. Yet, the unease persisted, growing stronger with each passing day. A young girl riding her bike past the house claimed she saw a pale hand press against the attic window before disappearing abruptly. A mailman reported catching a glimpse of a shadowy figure darting behind the basement door when Martin opened it to retrieve a package. And then there were the disappearances, the town's stray dogs and cats vanishing without explanation, leaving behind nothing but unanswered questions. The once welcoming aura of the Holloway's home began to shift. What had once been a place of hospitality now felt oppressive, as though the walls themselves were watching, waiting. Neighbors avoided walking too close to the house, glancing nervously toward the windows as if expecting something unspeakable to peer back at them. The transformation was gradual yet undeniable, turning the very essence of 132 Willow Lane into an unsettling enigma wrapped in dread. Eliza Monroe had been Diane's closest confidant for more than 15 years. Their friendship was built on shared experiences, mutual support, and countless hours spent laughing together over coffee or wine. Eliza knew Diane better than anyone else in Willow Creek, which made her sudden change in behavior all the more alarming. Diane stopped attending their weekly book club meetings, ceased answering phone calls, and avoided eye contact whenever they crossed paths at the supermarket. Her usual vivacity was replaced by a distant, hollow demeanor that left Eliza feeling uneasy. Determined to uncover what was wrong, Eliza decided to visit unannounced one afternoon. When Martin answered the door, Eliza immediately sensed that something was amiss. His face was gaunt, his eyes sunken, and his hands trembled slightly as he gripped the doorknob. Before she could ask about Diane, the overwhelming stench hit her, a putrid, cloying odor that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the house. "Is Diane home?" Eliza asked hesitantly, trying to peer past him. Martin hesitated, his expression shifting between nervousness and desperation. "She's resting," he said finally, forcing a weak smile. "Not feeling well." Eliza didn't believe him, not for a second. She noticed the tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers whitened around the doorframe, and the faint trace of something dark smeared across his sleeve. That night, unable to shake the feeling of foreboding, she picked up the phone and dialed the police. When law enforcement arrived at 132 Willow Lane, they found Martin standing in the doorway, visibly shaken but compliant. He allowed them inside without resistance, though his eyes darted nervously around the room as if searching for an escape route. Following the trail of the putrid smell, officers descended into the basement, where they encountered a scene straight out of a nightmare. Lining the walls were crude, makeshift cages, rusted and damp, their bars bent and scratched from desperate attempts at escape. Inside these cages, or what remained of them, were the remains of multiple victims. Some were skeletal, reduced to mere bones scattered across the floor, while others were barely decomposed, still bearing traces of clothing or personal belongings. Autopsies would later reveal that many had been kept alive for weeks, even months, subjected to unimaginable horrors before meeting their tragic ends. And then there was Diane. Officers discovered her locked in a small room upstairs, trembling violently and covered in bruises. Her once bright eyes were now dull and haunted, reflecting years of trauma and fear. When she saw the police, she whispered a single sentence that sent a chill through everyone present: "I tried to stop him." Those 4 words painted a devastating picture of a woman trapped in a living hell, forced to witness, and sometimes participate in, acts she never wanted to commit. Further investigation uncovered evidence of Martin's meticulous planning. Journals filled with disturbing entries detailed his obsession with control, power, and domination. Photographs documented his victims, capturing their faces before and after their capture. It was clear that Martin had not acted impulsively but had instead carefully orchestrated each crime, using his charming exterior to mask his monstrous interior. As psychologists delved deeper into Martin's psyche, they uncovered a troubled past that shed light on his descent into depravity. Born into poverty, Martin had been abandoned as a child and placed in a series of abusive foster homes. His caregivers had conditioned him to associate suffering with control, teaching him that inflicting pain was a means of asserting dominance. Over time, this warped worldview evolved into a twisted belief system that justified his actions. Diane, meanwhile, had fallen victim to Martin's manipulation early in their relationship. What started as subtle emotional abuse escalated into physical violence, culminating in her complete subjugation. She lived in constant fear, knowing that any attempt to resist would result in severe punishment, or worse, becoming one of his victims herself. Despite her captivity, Diane had tried to reach out for help, dropping subtle hints to friends and family. However, her pleas went unnoticed, dismissed as exaggerations or misunderstandings. Through therapy, Diane slowly began to reclaim pieces of her former self. Though scarred both physically and emotionally, she emerged as a survivor determined to raise awareness about domestic violence and the dangers of unchecked power dynamics. Her story served as a powerful reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and the importance of listening to those who cry out for help. When confronted with the overwhelming evidence against him, Martin offered no denial. Instead, he sat calmly in the interrogation room, his voice eerily composed as he spoke. "They were already broken," he muttered, staring blankly ahead. "I just gave them a place to rest." His words struck a nerve among the officers, sending waves of revulsion and disbelief coursing through the room. In his mind, Martin believed he was offering his victims some form of solace, providing them with a final resting place where they could escape the burdens of life. This distorted logic underscored the depths of his mental illness, revealing a man incapable of distinguishing reality from fantasy. As investigators pieced together the timeline of his crimes, they discovered that Martin had preyed on vulnerable individuals, runaways, addicts, and others living on the fringes of society. By targeting those less likely to be missed, he had managed to evade detection for years. His ability to blend seamlessly into the community, maintaining his facade of normalcy, highlighted the insidious nature of his deception. In the wake of the revelations surrounding 132 Willow Lane, the house was swiftly demolished, its foundations erased as if attempting to scrub away the stain of its history. Yet, the memory of what occurred there lingered, haunting the residents of Willow Creek and beyond. The community struggled to come to terms with the fact that such darkness had existed among them, masked by the comforting veneer of suburban life. The case of Martin Holloway serves as a stark reminder that evil does not always announce itself with thunderous roars or overt displays of malice. Instead, it often hides in plain sight, cloaked in the guise of normalcy, waiting patiently for someone to see it for what it truly is. It warns us to remain vigilant, to question appearances, and to listen when our instincts tell us something is wrong. Most importantly, it emphasizes the critical need for empathy, understanding, and action, to ensure that no one suffers alone, unseen and unheard, behind the closed doors of a seemingly perfect home. For while 132 Willow Lane may have been razed to the ground, its legacy endures as a cautionary tale, a grim testament to the thin line between light and shadow, and the terrifying potential for darkness to reside anywhere, even within the walls of a house we thought we knew.